Hey there, welcome to the UkeStuff channel and welcome to this full UkeGuide review of this instrument. This is the ADM Soprano Ukulele. It actually says on the inside, it is the B-JU110N-BR. This is an instrument that was brought in by one of my students, and I always, first of all, encourage my students' parents to contact me before buying an ukulele so I can make some recommendations of ukuleles that I know and trust. But that doesn't always work out. And sometimes parents buy their student the least expensive instrument they can find on Amazon. Their students bring them in. And then what I do is I offer to take those instruments home and try to make them as playable as I can by setting them up. Not everybody does that. I get it. It also gives me a chance to review these and also to allow other people sort of a warning note in a case where an instrument is not living up to its potential as a starter instrument. There are plenty that do, but there unfortunately are some that do not. So what we'll do in this full UkeGuide review is, first of all, we will look at some general categories that we do with all instruments. Second, I'll go over the specifications. And third, I'll give you a summary and a UkeGuide rating for this instrument. If you want to support the work here in this channel, there are three things you can do. First of all, you can like the video. Second, you can subscribe to the channel. And third, you can always buy me a cup of coffee to say thank you for making this content at buymeacoffee.com/UkeStuff. Also, there you'll find some other things actually for sale, including my ukulele method for teachers. You can also find my chord melody arrangements for Christmas and for hymns. And I actually have some picks on there that were made for me by Stone's Music in the UK. So if you make a donation towards my work, I can send you some picks as a thank you. All right, let's begin with the subjective categories that we look at with every one of these instruments. First of all, cost. This may be one of the least expensive ukuleles on the market at $31.34, especially with the kit that you get. The gig bag is not great, but the other parts are okay. You get strings, you get a tuner, you get a strap that clips into the sound hole, not my favorite type. All those things along with the ukulele for $31.34. That seems like a great value, but with setup issues, it's not. And we'll talk about that when we get to playability. So the value is actually lower than the price, even though the price is very good. The build quality has some issues because the action is too high. Can that be adjusted? Yes, but this is a $31 ukulele. You don't want to put double the cost into a luthier to have that sorted out. And chances are, if you're buying a starter ukulele, you don't know how to set it up either. Unless you're buying one of these to learn how to set up an ukulele, that's not a good investment. So the build quality there is problematic. There are a lot of other interesting choices here on this instrument. It can be made into a playable ukulele, but ultimately the build quality is not quite what I would want for a starter instrument. Let's take a look at the inside of the instrument. It's not terribly low quality basswood, which is nice to see. And you can see that, you've got a tail block. You can also see what you're seeing, by the way, up with the bridge support plate there, if I can get back far enough, isn't the strings popping through. It's just some of the grains of wood from the bridge support plate. You can see the screws popping through, which is just fine. It really isn't much glue mess. There is no kerfing, but on a laminate ukulele like this, it's probably not needed anyway. All right, that's the lower bout of the instrument. Let's look at the upper bout. It's always hard to get a really good view here, but again, you see that it has no kerfing, which is fine. Even the lower end callas are being made that way these days. The kerfing just adds more strength to the instrument. There's the neck block, and I don't see any other supports, horizontal or vertical, on the inside, whether it's the back of the ukulele or the soundboard. So this is just basswood laminate that's just glued together in the shape of an ukulele, and it functions. It does function as a sound box to make those sound waves become amplified to hear as an ukulele, and the sound is okay. So that's our quick look at the ADM Soprano Ukulele. That whole bunch of letters, the B-JU, looking at it there, 110N-BR. The appearance, it looks good enough from a distance. It is a painted entry-level ukulele. The biggest problem with painted ukuleles really is that they chip like this. So standard laminates might get a scratch. I don't see them chip like a painted ukulele. So that's the negative of having a painted entry level ukulele. In terms of availability, if you want one of these, you can get one in a variety of colors. And the sound quality is pretty basic. It's a basic laminate sound. As sold, with the issues with the setup where the action is way too high, it can't play in tune up the neck. So you need to set it up to have it play in tune. So the sound quality, the sound itself is not great. It's not bad. It's very middle of the road laminate. It has acceptable volume. It's more on the dark side. It does have some sustain. But it's not a great tone. But again, you wouldn't expect that for $31 either. Another thing I do in these videos is I let you see what I'm hearing. So I'm going to play the C chord into the iPad app Tonal Energy Tuner. That will let you see what's happening on the sound spectrum, on the harmonic energy as I play the chord. Here we go. So as suspected, not a lot of high-end sustain. That's to be expected on laminate. The sustain is all on the lower end of the instrument. Again, not a really complex tone, not a bad tone. It's kind of what you'd expect for a very entry-level laminate ukulele. All right, now that we've looked at the subjective categories, let's look at the specifications. It is a soprano ukulele with a scale length of 13.4375 inches, so just shorter than 13.5 inches. It has 12 frets with 12 to the body. It has no side position markers. And if you know this channel, that limits the score to a 3 maximum. The body style is a double bout. The soundboard and back and sides are all laminate basswood. I am not sure what the fretboard is because that also is painted in a flat paint. It has a plastic tie bar bridge. That's plastic, molded plastic there. And it is screwed in with screws right there. It happens with a lot of entry-level instruments. It does not have a radius fretboard. The nut and saddle are plastic. The action is too high. We'll get to that in a minute. The saddle is not compensated, and the finish is a gloss paint, which again is subject to chipping. The overall length is 21 inches exactly from the top of the crown to the bottom of the instrument, and it weighs 15.1 ounces. It has closed geared tuners with some smaller side buttons. I've seen some larger recently. And the action at the first fret is 1.25 millimeters, which is basically 0.75 millimeters too high, so that has to come down. And the action at the 12th fret is 3.20 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the action at the nut first and see what that does to the 12th fret, and then I'll have to lower the 12th fret aside by lowering the saddle a little bit more. So that's sort of how I'm going to approach it, or I'll sort of get a medium ground of where I know it needs to go at the nut so then I can balance it. So ultimately, what am I shooting for? It's 0.5 millimeters at the first fret and 2.65 millimeters at the 12th fret if I can. That's kind of the goal, trying to avoid any buzzing. The nut width is 34.24 millimeters, so a narrow, not even approaching 35 millimeters quite yet. And the space between strings at the first fret is 8.69, which is only 27.80 millimeters from G to A. That's problematic too. So if you have large hands, that string spacing is going to be pretty tight. The depth of the neck at the third fret is 22.55, so that is a rather chunky, deep neck as well, but part of that is also the string height off the top of the instrument. All right, now that we've talked about the specifications, let's get into a summary and a UkeGuide rating for this instrument. Again, a student brought this in. It was purchased for them off of Amazon, came with a kit, and it's a really enticing price. It's an entry-level basswood painted ukulele, and there are some decent ones out there. I've reviewed a few of them. You can actually find them in my reviews. And generally, if an instrument gets at 3.5 or higher, you know that you can buy it with confidence. There are better instruments, but a 3.5 is absolutely functional for most players. Now, while the basswood instrument itself and the quality of the basswood is acceptable on this instrument, the action is just too high. And any savings that you would get from the price of the instrument, you would lose in either your time of setting it up or bringing it to a luthier who's going to probably charge at least $75 to adjust the instrument. So there are other instruments to buy that would save you time and money rather than buying the ADM. Now, could ADM address this? Absolutely. A stricter policy on their setup, making sure that quality control made sure that that setup did not exceed certain tolerances. I'd say no higher than 0.6, giving them some leeway at the first fret, and no higher than 3, and that's pushing it, at the 12th fret. Then you start to get into an acceptable range, but as it is, it's too high. So ADM could address this and then make this a better deal, but they might have to raise their prices to do it. So this may no longer be a $31 ukulele, but a $35 ukulele to ship with good action. That would be totally worth it to the consumer. So I can't recommend it as it stands, but if ADM can address that issue, and again, does that mean that everyone will be set up poorly? No, but you sort of lead to the idea that they're being bulk shipped and they're probably all set up in a similar way with just a nut slapped on and a saddle thrown in, and there's no adjustment whatsoever. So sort of the gut feeling is that this would be indicative of the entire series. It could be a one-off, but I would doubt it. Yeah, and that's about it. That's all I've got to say on this ADM. If you have one, it's not a terrible instrument, but you'll want to check to make sure that the setup is good. So thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll be back soon with some more Uke stuff for you.